When you were in school, did you ever do one of those things where you would prick your finger and then put a drop of blood on a slide and look at it under a microscope? If so, then you took part in a human experiment to better understand our species. Congratulations. You got learnt. Human beings are experimented on every day all around the world. The fact of the matter is you kind of have to. There's only so much that you can learn from a lab. Like right now, we're finally seeing the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, and that was only made possible after testing on thousands of people. So human medical experiments are necessary. But of course, they're carried out with strict protocols and stringent ethical standards. This is part of the scientific process, which has been perfected for centuries. But unfortunately, this has not always been the case. Throughout history, there have been examples of horrible medical experiments conducted on humans under the guise of war, national security, or just straight up ethnic or racial purity. In fact, it's debatable they should even be called experiments. The experiments are really just excuses for cruelty. Now, I'm sure in many of these cases, the people who carried out these experiments thought that they were doing a service to the world by finding out knowledge that they couldn't get any other way. But did they? Let's find out as we take a look at some of the most horrible human experiments of all time.
Shalom, shalom. This is your brother, Kadar Bun. I'd like to start off by saying, all praises and honor and glory are due unto Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Rahah Kadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, men who have labored and suffered patiently in this truth for over 30 plus years, making their lives and their bodies a living sacrifice. Shalom to the various GMS camps, along with the elders of those camps, and another shalom to the men not named GMS, but are also on the highways and hedges, walking, talking in the same spirit, one body in Yahweh Shai, the 100% doctrine. To you I say shalom. Now I'm just going to start this off with scripture, because you heard him say that experimentation or experiments are necessary. And you see the video, it says the most horrifying human experiments of all times being perpetrated by your mans, the white man, also known as Esau Edom. And we're gonna grab a quick scripture. Start this over. Salaki. This is Revelations chapter 12, verse 9 in the King James, and it reads, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." Now, that word devil just goes into the Greek, which you go into the Greek means diablos, or slander, or accuser, or deceiver. And so when you hear that term, the devil, it's just talking about a man in the flesh here that deceives, slanders, and that title fits the so-called white man perfectly. The devil just means adversary of the Most High. And you can look at this man's legislation and his laws that he's established since coming into rulership. Everything that he decrees is an abomination and an adversary to the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. So he is that devil. He is Satan in the flesh. Let's keep it moving.
Now, before we begin, I need to give the disclaimer that what we're about to talk about in this video gets dark. Like, dark. This honestly might be some of the most disturbing stuff I've talked about on this channel, and I'm the severed head guy. But this stuff actually happened. And this is a good example of just how far down human beings can go. It's worth facing, even if it's uncomfortable. And it's gonna get uncomfortable. Grigory Marianovsky was a Russian biochemist who ran a lab that specialized in poison research. And by that I mean he was finding new and innovative ways to poison people to death. The facility went by several names: Laboratory 1, Laboratory 12, and Kamera, meaning cell or chamber in Russian, and it was supervised by a high-ranking official named Gingrich Yagoda, not to be confused with Grogu Yoda. But it was Marianovsky who carried out these experiments, and it seems like this was actually a job he was born to do. I mean, his PhD was actually titled Biological Activity of the Products of Interaction of Mustard Gas with Human Skin Tissue.
Salakia Hakim. Who comes up with this? Who comes up with biological activity of the product of interaction with mustard gas with human tissue as an elective? Have you even heard of such things? You understand? I mean, this is a walk in the park for this man to come up with ways to be diabolical. You know? We're gonna grab another scripture real quick while we. This is to a certain degree unbelievable. Damn believable. You know, come up with an elective as such. That's something deep, then. And this man is the agent of spiritual demon Satan, which, by the way, is an order. It's one of the sons of the Most High, and he carries out the duty of the Most High on the left-hand side. But this, just as Esau Edom does the duties of the Most High, he on the left-hand side here in the fleshly realm. But we're gonna prove that this man here is just, by all means, out of his wits. This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're just gonna get right to the point. Verse 7, and it reads, For the mystery of iniquity doeth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. Only the Most High, who has set this man up to do the things that he's doing, can take this man out the way. But he has to accomplish what he was set up for. Verse 8, and then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy him with the brightness of his coming. And that's speaking about Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, the Son, the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father. He's going to be the only one that could take this man down, because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai sought this man up. He sought him up. He gave him his blessing. He gave him his rulership. Those things can only be given unto the men who ruled the earth, who ruled kingdoms, can only be sought up by the powers that created this place. Verse 9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. Biological activity of the product of interaction of mustard gas with human tissue. You tell me that ain't the comings of the working of Satan. And the Most High is the only one going to be able to take this clown down. Let's continue.
he chose that for his thesis. So he brought that zeal for poisons with him to the lab, where they carried out involuntary experiments on prisoners from the gulags, including chemicals like digitoxin, curare, cyanide, mustard gas, and ricin. Ultimately, what they were looking for was an odorless and tasteless combination of things that could kill somebody without being detected. And they basically put the poisons in vitamins that they gave to the prisoners, so the prisoners had no idea that they were taking poisons at all. That is, until they were unable to breathe or their heart stopped beating. It's literally impossible to know how many prisoners died as a result of this testing, but due to their research, this actually led to some high-profile assassinations in the real world, including Bulgarian dissident Gregory Markov, who was famously killed by a poison pellet to his leg that was administered by a modified umbrella. Yeah, some secret agent literally just jabbed him in the leg with an umbrella as he walked by in the street, and it administered a little tiny pellet with ricin in it. He died in the hospital 4 days later.
It's hard. But it's real. It's not that hard because as a hopeful man of the Most High, a hopeful servant of the Most High, I've always understood this man to be a diabolical bastard, so-called white man, Esau Edom. You know. But what I didn't understand was, you know, why was he set up? I don't know why, but because he taught us in Christian sanity that, you know, to love thy enemy and all of this other foolishness, this brainwashing, you know, to view him as the son of the Lord. But we know now that that was the Most High's doing, you know. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 11, that he should send you strong delusions that you should believe a lie, you know. But it's just like in that verse where it says that he would be brought down, he would be taken out the way. The Most High had to set him up, and I wanted to grab that real quick. In the book of Daniel, chapter 4, and verse 17. You know what? We're gonna start at verse 16, and this is actually Daniel dealing with Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar was the king over the Babylonians at that time when certain of the Israelites were taken into captivity under the Babylonian rule. But this could relate to Esau Edom as well, because this man is truly a beast. The behavior, the attributes, just his overall view of living things reeks and conveys a beast. But let's get it. This is Daniel chapter 4, verse 16. It says, let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This is the point. Verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know, that the living may know. The world of Israel. People such as myself, because I wonder why this man was put in the place he was put in. You know, and why we had to be under his rule. It says, and the demand of the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth into whosoever he will, and set up over it the basis of men. Plain and simple. The bottom of all the families that he made, Esau Edom, is the basis of men. It's like you got a 3-story house with a basement in it. The basement is the lowest portion of the house. Mankind, humans, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, is the lowest you can go. And the Most High set him up. It was his will. And that's why the Most High is to come back by way of his only begotten son, Yahweh Shai, and take this man out the way. Because Esau He fulfills the Lord will on the left-hand side. Keep it moving.
We still don't know the exact location of the lab because it was kept secret, but a KGB defector in 1954 said that it was near a police station in Lubyanka. In fact, some people think that the lab, or some version of the lab, is still experimenting on people to this very day. But that's the Soviet Union. They're evil. We all know that. The United States would never... Oh, boy. Yes, shocking, I know. But the United States doesn't come out completely clean in this either. There's a few human experiment programs that happened, including the San Jose Project in World War II. San Jose Island, or Isla San Jose, is in the Gulf.
Now, we're going to get over into the portion of the video where it shows that the United States, your people, I'm being funny, I'm being cynical. It's like the United States, the place in which we reside, all 12 of the tribes at the end times, is going to perform these experiments on guess who? The nation of Israel. With a few of his people sprinkled in here and there. You know, the devil's very deceitful and clever and crafty in what he does, you dig? But the main objective are you Israelites. You Israelites. You are never far from this man's dreams, his visions, his thoughts, because there's a perpetual hatred between you and him. Keep moving.
Of Panama, and in World War II, the United States had a base there, and at this base, they conducted experiments on how mustard gas affected the human body. On humans. These particular humans were U.S. troops, which were kind of voluntold to do it, which in itself is not that big a deal. I mean, soldiers put their bodies on the line in a million different ways, sure, but what makes this one a little bit sus is how they chose the troops. They did it by race. African American and Puerto Rican soldiers were singled out for these experiments because it was thought at the time that their darker skin would make them more resistant to mustard gas and thus make them more valuable on the front lines in Japan. And Japanese American soldiers were tested on to see how mustard gas would affect enemy soldiers. Around 60,000 enlisted men were experimented on with mustard gas during World War II, meaning we probably gassed more of our own soldiers than we did enemy soldiers. And I should point out it wasn't just minorities that were tested on, white soldiers were tested on in control groups as well.
And I would like to point out it wasn't just African Americans, it was white soldiers too. That's that little sprinkle of deception, that little, what you call casualties of war. You understand? You understand? He's always trying to minimize his wickedness. You know what I'm saying? He's always trying to minimize. Just like he said earlier in the video that human experimentation was a necessary. You know what I'm saying? It was necessary. You understand? Just like prescription drugs. You know, it's a necessary evil. You know. This man is full of guile and deceit. And you're never to trust this man. Thus, we'll get into the machinations and the mark. Let's keep it moving.
And the soldiers were exposed to mustard gas in 3 different ways. Patch tests, applying liquid mustard gas directly to a subject's skin. Field tests, which exposed subjects to gas outside in simulated combat scenarios. And chamber tests, literally putting soldiers in a chamber and piping mustard gas inside of it. That sounds horrible. And a quick side note, this buddy of mine was in the Army, and he told me all about the basic training and how they put them in the tear gas chamber to make them, get exposed to tear gas so they understood what it felt like in the combat situations. And when he was talking about how it was horrible and it stung your eyes and you were just puking and just snot was flying out of your face and it was the worst experience of his entire life. But afterwards, he said, I've never breathed freer in my life. Like, all the mucus came out of me. And so now every time I get sick and I'm laying down and I can't breathe and I'm all clogged up and everything, I just think, God, just put me in the gas chamber and get it over with, Yeah, mustard gas is way worse than that. Mustard gas causes blisters to form immediately when it touches the skin or the inside of your lungs. This isn't something you just cough out and then you're done with it. This damages things permanently. People who are exposed to mustard gas often come down with things like asthma and emphysema later on because of the damage to the lungs. But even worse than that, it also damages DNA, which leads to leukemia and skin cancers. Mustard gas...
It damages DNA. Mind you, the machination that they're voluntarily administering that right now, it does what? It attacks your RNA, your DNA.
Gas was first used widely in World War I by the Germans. The gas has a yellow-brown appearance and can smell like garlic, horseradish, or, well, mustard. And it was after the Germans used mustard gas on Polish citizens in 1939 that the U.S. decided we needed our own stockpile. By the end of the war, we had produced more than 100,000 tons of various types of mustard gas, including 20,000 tons of Lewisite, 100 tons of nitrogen mustard, and 87,000 tons of sulfur mustard. The mustard gas experiments were shocking. But what might be even more shocking is how these soldiers were treated afterwards. Despite being told that they would be taken care of afterwards, and despite the permanent injuries they sustained, they still weren't able to get any kind of disability compensation from the Veterans Administration because the tests were carried out in secret. It wasn't until NPR did a report on this in 2015 that the survivors finally had their stories told, and the Department of Veteran Affairs finally stepped in and decided to do something about it. That story won a Peabody, by the way. Of course, it wasn't just Americans that did this. The British also did something with Indian soldiers around that.
It wasn't just the Americans. Mind you, the Russians, the British, and the so-called Americans are all the same race of people. Edomites, white folks.
Same time, also for the same reasons. They thought that the darker skin would make them more resistant to mustard gas. It didn't, and thousands of Indian soldiers were permanently scarred for life. For the love of God, melanin does not turn you into Wolverine.
Here we go.
In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service began to recruit black men aged 25 to 60 to participate in the study. This study was done in conjunction with the Tuskegee Institute, and most of the participants were picked in the surrounding areas of Macon County, mostly poor and illiterate sharecroppers. Its purpose was to study the natural history of syphilis, how it affected a person over time, and how it spread through communities. And the name of this study was the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. People generally just call it the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment now. Fewer syllables. They basically just chose 600 people. 399 of them had syphilis and 201 of them didn't, so they were in the control group. And the idea was they were just going to watch them over a long period of time and see how the disease progressed. Now, there's nothing really all that sketchy about that. It's not like they gave people syphilis or anything.
It wasn't nothing, it wasn't nothing really sketchy about all that, no big deal, This proud, pompous devil, you know what I mean? Even the man who's narrating this video, which is his own YouTube channel, it goes to show you the spirit of these folks. And Jake lining up, at these church houses, especially the elder of our people, just lining up, just falling head over heels, talking about, even complaining the fact that complaining to the tune of that the white folks are getting it and we not getting the vaccination. Man, I'm gonna tell you something, man. Our people are straight up dumb, diddy, goddamn dumb. Trying to keep it clean, But it's hard to keep your anger under wraps when you see this foolishness. When you see this level of numbskulldness, just blatant disregard of the facts. These are just simple Google searches that you can drum up yourself. If you got a Facebook or Snapchat and TikTok and you can Google and see who got locked up and this and that and the third, talking about that nothingness. Just a bunch of foolishness. If you can Google search that, then you can also Google search this as well and find out these things. But Jake is complicit in his stupidity, in his ignorance. Let's keep it moving.
They already had it, and just for context, syphilis is a bacterial infection, and this was pre-antibiotics, so it was untreatable at the time. It is a sexually transmitted disease, so it's usually spread by sexual contact, and it can remain dormant in the body for years before it finally starts to really take over. But once it does, if it's not treated, it's a horror show. People with secondary syphilis break out with rashes and wart-like lesions all over the body, and in tertiary syphilis, inflammatory balls called gummas grow under the skin, on bones, and in organs, causing damage to the heart, the liver, and the brain, which leads to dementia, psychosis, and seizures, and eventually death. So yeah, syphilis was a scourge back then, and really had been throughout all of human history. Especially in militaries, it would just decimate the ranks, and officers were obsessed with controlling the spread of syphilis. In fact, spoiler alert, this is not the last time you're going to hear about syphilis in this video. So to the guys in this study, the die had been cast. There wasn't really any way to treat it. There wasn't anything to do about it. So to them, this was just a way to contribute to the scientific understanding of it. And they also got free meals and basic medical care out of it. And all that seems fine, I guess. The problem is, in 1947, they discovered that syphilis can be treated with penicillin. And they just kind of didn't ever tell the people in the study. Yeah, you know that thing that you have that's going to deform your body and make you go insane? Well, there's a way that we can fix it, but I think we'd rather just see what happens.
I think we'd just rather see what happens. And this is the man you trust. We got a few more minutes of another video, Akim. We're going to close this out.
President Biden is pushing hard for a new COVID relief bill, and we just learned new details about what that includes overnight. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell's tracking it all from the White House this morning. Kelly, good morning to you.
Good morning, Kristen. A critical week ahead for President Biden's effort to go big on COVID relief. The Democrats have put in writing, lots of writing, the specifics of their plan to fund vaccines, schools, food programs, and lots of personalized financial help. There can be changes made in the coming weeks, so the pressure is on President Biden to sell it, and he did so on the road. At Michigan's Pfizer COVID vaccine plant,
Oh, it happens there. Yeah.
President Biden toured the production line Friday and delivered a dose of forceful encouragement.
The vaccines are safe. Please, for yourself, your family, your community, this country, take the vaccine when it's your turn and available.
In a new development, House Democrats released the first text of the nearly 600-page COVID relief bill that extends unemployment benefits at $400 a week through August, sends direct payments of $1,400 per person and for each child for families earning up to $150,000 a year, and includes a sliding increase in the minimum wage up to $15 an hour after 4 years. President Biden pushed Republican lawmakers who call his $1.9 trillion COVID package too expensive.
Let me ask them, what would they have me cut? What would they have me leave out?
The president put a folksy spin on criticizing Mr. Trump.
My predecessors, my mother would say, God love them, failed to order enough vaccines.
New criticism appeared in a British paper that asked Dr. Anthony Fauci about fallout when he publicly disagreed with Mr. Trump. He did things or allowed things to happen that were terrible, referring to Trump White House aides who had publicly undercut Fauci's credibility. Friday, President Biden updated the vaccine timeline, saying the U.S. should have enough by the end of July for all Americans, but cautions that more hurdles like weather delays could interfere.
I believe we'll be approaching normalcy by the end of this year, and God willing, this Christmas will be different than last. But I can't make that commitment to you.
He can't make that commitment to you. Study pushing that goalpost. This time last year, they told you that when they come up with a vaccination, it would be the end of, of all this turmoil, all this grief, and all this this madness. Here we are at that point of that time, that same time and point the following year, and they started pushing the goalpost back. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 10, and it reads, "Never trust thy enemy, for like iron rusted, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed, and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as a looking glass white." I can't see. Salakia, let's read that again, verse 11. "Though thou humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust had not been altogether wiped away. I'm gonna leave it right there. This man shows you time and time again that he's wicked beyond anything that you can imagine. And he starts with our elders, with the elder of our people who went through that 1960s, 1950s, 70s deal, civil rights, sit-in counters. Somebody with Jake literally had the fight beat out of him. You understand? Dogs sicked on him. You know what I'm talking about? Bombing of churches and whatnot. And now Jake, our elders, our so-called leaders, they just give in and teach the children thereof, the generations that come behind them, to do the same. It's time out for that, because this man has tricks up his sleeves. He has an agenda. You understand? And this vaccination will lead to the implementation of the mark. And from the mark, you will have the third world's woe. Wake up, Jake. And with that, Shalom.